Okay, let's talk about two of the most confusing job titles in tech: product manager and product owner. You see them everywhere, right? They sound almost identical. And honestly, the job descriptions can look like they've been copied and pasted. So, what is the deal? If you've ever felt confused by this, you are definitely not alone. It is one of the biggest, most persistent debates in the entire industry. So, that's the big question we're tackling today. What is the real difference? Is one just a fancy new title for the other? And maybe, more importantly, which one is the right path for you and your career? Well, we are going to dive in and demystify this whole thing once and for all. By the end of this, I promise you'll know exactly how they're different, why they overlap, and how they're supposed to work together. Here's a quick look at our game plan. We'll start with the confusion itself, then we'll get into the textbook definitions. After that, we'll uncover where all this overlap actually came from, look at how smart companies make these roles work, and finally, we'll talk about what all this means for your career, beyond just the job title. All right, first up, the role confusion. And seriously, let me just say it again. If you're confused, you are in very, very good company. So here's the absolute heart of the problem. You go on any job site and you'll see descriptions for product managers and product owners that ask for the exact same skills. Who owns the roadmap? Who talks to the customers? Who prioritizes the work? When the lines get that blurry, it's a recipe for disaster. You get unclear responsibilities, people stepping on each other's toes, and a whole lot of unnecessary team friction. Okay, so to cut through all of that noise, let's just strip it all back. Let's look at the by-the-book definitions of what these two roles were originally meant to be. You know, the easiest way to think about this is all about direction and focus. The product manager is fundamentally outward-facing. Think of them with a telescope, scanning the horizon, looking at the market, the competitors, the big picture. They're obsessed with the big questions. Why are we even building this, and what is the right thing to build? The product owner, on the other hand, is inward-facing. They're using a microscope, focused squarely on the development team and the nitty-gritty details. They ask, how are we going to build this, and when can we get it done?
So digging a little deeper, a product manager is the strategic leader. You can almost think of them as the CEO of the product. They are responsible for its overall success. They do the market research, they talk to customers, they align with business goals, and they synthesize all of that into a clear vision, a strategy, and a long-term roadmap.
Now, the product owner, this role comes from a very specific place, the Scrum framework for agile development. Their entire mission is to maximize the value that the development team produces. And they do that by managing and prioritizing the product backlog, which is basically a detailed ordered to-do list for the team. They are the voice of the customer to the developers, making sure the team is always working on the most important thing next. Okay, so if those definitions are actually pretty clear, why on earth is there so much confusion? Well, the answer isn't in what they do, it's in their history. It's really a tale of two different timelines. Now look at this, look at the huge time gap here. The product manager job isn't new. It's been a core business profession for decades, since the 1930s. But the product owner role, that's way younger. It was literally invented in the late 90s as a core component of Scrum. The confusion really kicked into high gear in the 2000s, when all these companies that already had product managers started adopting Agile and Scrum. Suddenly, they had these two titles that seemed to be fighting for the same space. And this right here, this is probably the single most important thing to understand to clear all this up. A product manager is a job title. It's a formal position within a company's hierarchy. A product owner is a role. Specifically, it's a role you play on a Scrum team. So a product manager can play the role of a product owner. But if your company doesn't use the Scrum framework, then technically the product owner role doesn't even exist there. So you might be wondering, why did the creators of Scrum even bother inventing a new role? Couldn't they just use product manager? Well, there were a few good reasons. Back in the 90s, a lot of PMs worked in this really slow, clunky way called waterfall. They'd write a massive requirements document, throw it over the wall to engineering, and kind of disappear. That just doesn't work in a fast-paced, iterative world. Also, the word owner was chosen very deliberately. It signals that this person is empowered to make fast decisions for the team without having to go ask a committee for permission. Okay, that's enough history and theory. Let's get practical. How do real companies make this work in the real world and turn that potential for conflict into a powerful collaboration?
Yeah, this is the million-dollar question for so many teams, isn't it? With all this overlap, how do you set things up so your PM and PO aren't rivals, but instead form a dynamic duo?
Well, in an ideal world, the best model works like a relay race.
The product manager starts things off. They define the why, the big vision and strategy, and then they hand the baton to the product owner. The PO then takes that vision and focuses on the how, translating it into an actionable backlog for the team. But here's the absolute key. This only works if they're in constant communication. They have to be in sync, daily, to make sure the strategy and the execution are perfectly aligned.
But let's be real, in a lot of companies, the most common and often simplest solution is this. The product manager just also acts as the product owner. It's one person wearing two hats. They own the high-level strategy and the day-to-day execution with the team. It completely eliminates any confusion over who is responsible for what, because, well, it's all the same person.
So, we've covered the definitions, the history, and the practical setups. Let's zoom out now and talk about what really matters. What does all of this mean for you and your career path?
First things first, let's talk about hierarchy and money. Generally speaking, the product manager title is considered more senior, and the compensation usually reflects that. As you can see here, PMs on average tend to have a higher base salary. This just reinforces the idea that in organizations that actually have both separate roles, the PM is often in a more strategic and sometimes senior position. But here is probably the most important piece of career advice I can give you on this topic. Please, do not get hung up on the title. A product owner role can be a fantastic way to get into a product management career. You get this incredibly valuable hands-on experience working directly with the development team, learning how to manage a backlog, and seeing how software actually gets built. If the responsibilities sound right for you, take the job. Focus on the skills you're going to build, not just the title on your business card. And you know, at the end of the day, this quote really says it all perfectly. We can debate these titles forever, but what truly matters is the value you create, the good you do for your users and for the business. That's the real measure of a great product person, no matter what your title happens to be. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Take a look at your own company, or maybe a company you're thinking of joining. How do they define these roles? How do they talk about them? Is their setup creating clarity and empowerment? Or is it just adding to the confusion? The answer to that question will tell you a whole lot about their product culture.